call the meeting to order. If you could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll get a roll call, Mr. Stoddard.
Dwight Handspike?
Here.
Jason Hanselman?
Here.
Brad Stoddard here. John Travatano?
Here.
Lisa Truscott?
Here.
Brad Weaver?
Yep.
David Corr?
Thank you. So tonight's special meeting is for the purpose of interviewing board candidates. Our first candidate we're going to interview is Mackenzie Felposh.
Hello.
Hi, good evening. So just format-wise, we're going to have like 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
I'm going to start with kind of an introductory question, and then we'll work our way from my left to my right.
Okay.
So, welcome. Thanks for your interest again. We really had this awesome candidates. We had 17 total candidates.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I think reflective of our community, it was hard to narrow down to 3, and it'll be even harder to narrow down to 1. So thanks for being here tonight. Just wanted to start with an opportunity to tell us why you're interested in serving on the board. Maybe talk just a little bit about kind of an introductory statement, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. My name is Mackenzie Felposh. My husband Adam and I have lived here in DeWitt for about 6 years. Take my glasses off because masks and glasses not so great all the time. We've lived here for about 6 years. I have a daughter in the 5th grade at Hermiston Woods. I think what's important to know about me is I am an educator. I have both a bachelor's and a master's degree in education, and have really dedicated my professional life to the education world. I was a classroom teacher for about 15 years, and then moved to the association world, where I've worked with principals, the Elementary and Middle School Principals Association here in Michigan, as well as the Michigan Association of School Boards. So I feel like I am uniquely equipped for a position here. Kind of brings all of my professional life and personal life together.
All right, Mackenzie, I'm next up. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal value and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
Just a small question.
Yeah.
I think for me, the whole question about to mask or not to mask, I watched how you all came to that conversation, and was thankful for your balanced approach, that you positioned yourselves to listen, and that you set in place a plan so that you weren't making decisions with emotion, but from a place of proactivity. I think bringing voices to a table is important. Getting all the information you can to make the best decision you can. So that I was impressed and thankful as a mom for that decision. Can you remind me of the second part of that question, Ben?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of comments.
Yeah, that's
in
a big
it,
question.
So, don't have a problem. I'll just go through the whole thing again.
Okay.
Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal value and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
The community concern piece, you represent all of us, right? You work to hear our full community. So I appreciated the ability to take a survey I thought it was quick, that I could explain my rationale thoughtfully. It gave me space to do that. And then I watched as you considered those. So I felt as a citizen listened to, and I think that's important. I like the position that I hear so much from this group and from Dr. Spickard about the importance of keeping our kids in the classroom, and the work that you all have done and the whole staff has done to keep that forefront. I think is really to be commended and is impressive. That the keeping the majors major in the conversation and keeping our kids in the classroom. So, yeah. There's a lot of parts to that question. Community, students. The policy stuff, it changes so rapidly that keeping a handle on that is sometimes a challenge. So I'm thankful that we're not alone in that we get to do that, that we get to do that as a community, and you all do that with Dr. Spickard and your council, and that you've got people who are guiding well in that area.
What would you like to see changed in the district, and how would you envision your role in that change?
Well, that's a big question too.
Just come out swinging.
Just come out swinging, all right. I, as a teacher, I kind of always thought that parenting would be easy, the hubris. But I have a child who is a challenge in a lot of ways. She is a delight, but she doesn't fit a lot of norms. And watching her navigate school has been difficult at times. So when I think about things that I would like to see change, I would love to see our district continue to grow into the space of all kinds of diversity. That you don't have to select your opportunity in 3rd grade or you'll never get a chance to play basketball. That you don't have to, any number of things. That if you're going to decide to be on student government, you better start in 1st grade, or that ship has sailed. I think that's one of the reasons that we chose to move here was because of the schools. And as my daughter grows, I worry about that. And not just for her, but for kids like her who might not know what they want to do when they're 8 years old. So I think that that's part of it. Another piece of diversity, I was really happy to see that you're interviewing 3 women tonight. I think that's important at your board table, that you're looking for differing views in our community, and I would be excited to be a part of that.
Hi, Jen. At times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law you're required to uphold as a trustee. Mm-hmm. How would you handle this?
I know that that's a difficult position. I think that this is where my understanding of board governance is handy. I am a firm believer that once the board has made a decision, that's the decision of the board. I think there should be rich and robust discussion at the board table. I think viewpoints should be expressed clearly and often, and that communication is transparent and essential. But once the board has voted, then we vote as one body, and that is the decision of the board.
So the
suppose it's a hypothetical, but it's not. Describe your response if a parent cornered you in a grocery store and ask for your support on a particular hot issue.
Yeah. Oh, it happens a lot, doesn't it? I think my response would be to refer someone to the chain of command. Much like the military, there's knowing who to speak to about an issue is key. And I think a lot of times people want to be heard. If I am one of 7, my power is very limited. But if I can point you in the direction of the person to talk to, then that can be empowering. And sometimes enough, sometimes not. But I think the long and short of that is it wouldn't be my place to give my position. This is the place to talk about ideas and positions, not the aisles of mice.
Hi, Mackenzie.
And
What do you think are the most important skills for students to have when they graduate?
all of them. I think I remember sitting in kindergarten orientation over at First Now and hearing the principal there say, all of your little ones that you're so concerned about right now, they will learn how to read. But we will teach them that. But more than that, we want them to learn the kind of people that they want to be. We want to teach them how to be kind and give them opportunities to practice that. We want to give them opportunities to practice their strengths and find their skills and be the people that they were created to be. That might be kind of pie in the sky, but I don't think it is. I think that those pieces of our citizenship and who we are as individuals are what bring us together into a community. And that's where our humanity and our strength really lies. So is it important to know how to read? Absolutely. Do we want to know how to do math and play the trombone? Yes, please. But more than that, when my daughter leaves here, I want her to be able to stand in herself and who she is and know her own strength and her own skills.
Okay, so I have the last question. You kind of touched on some of these pieces in one of your earlier responses, but what qualities, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
My sunny disposition. No, I do think that, as I've mentioned, my background in education, my understanding of board governance, I think that those are important things to feature. But I think I would also want to say, I come to this seriously. I come with intention to serve our community. With my whole self, all the parts of me, the professional bits of me, the parental bits of me. That's how I want to lead, is with my full self.
Thank you.
So believe it or not, we've already gone through 15 minutes, so
Whoa.
that's almost our whole time, but I do want to give an opportunity if there's any other remarks or comments you want to make before we wrap things up.
Just thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and cheering you on. Whether or not I am chosen to sit with you, it is a pleasure to serve you and to be part of this community. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep going. All right, Angelina Barnes. spoiler alert, since you sat and watched the last one, the questions may be somewhat similar, I think, for the. So I'll start the same way, just talk a little bit about a little bit about background, tell us a little bit about why you're interested in serving on the board.
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Angelina Barnes, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. In terms of who I am and why I want to be a part of the Board of Education is I've always been in service, whether it's selling retail shoes at a sports retail when I turned 16, to being a federal law clerk, to being an assistant attorney general, and through my work as an executive director of a health regulatory board. All of those have been service positions. I've spent my career in state government service as well as an internal control director, providing advice and guidance and oversight to 78 different executive branch agencies, including all of their public boards. Everything I do is about service. I see the practice. I'm also an attorney, licensed attorney in both Michigan and Minnesota. And in that capacity, the law is a service. It is interpreting and digesting and then providing that information back to whoever, your client or whoever needs to consume it in a way that makes sense for them. So it is a true service. And so this just fits with that component of that. In terms of education, I am my family's first college graduate. To me, education is critical. I graduated from James Madison College at Michigan State with a BA in social relations. And until Mr. Weaver, I didn't realize you could not be a lawyer with a social relations degree. So I got my Juris Doctorate from William Mitchell College of Law, and I really understand through that experience and being my family's first what it means to have access to high quality education and lifelong learning opportunities. And I think those begin in our K through 12 schools. I have two children in the DeWitt School District, a 9th grader and a 5th grader. They have very different personalities and learning styles. And so in part, as I watch my teacher friends and those in education over the past few years, they're grappling with some pretty big and complex issues. And sometimes barriers that prevent them from providing what they do best. If there's anything that I can do to help with that, if there's even one small thing to remove a barrier to active engagement in lifelong learning, to foster a spirit of the ability to have open discussion and relationships and a connection with the community, or remove those barriers to excellence in education, I want to be a part of that for sure. So I really can't think of a better use of my time than to give back in this capacity.
Thank you.
All right, got a long question. Grammatically, lots of commas.
Okay.
Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal value and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue. And I can say it again.
Okay. We may need to revisit the parts, but I appreciate that. I think when I hear that question, one of the main things I think about is in my career, I have been a both state and national trainer of public boards. So I have spent over 9 years training public boards all over the United States and Canada on their ethical, fiscal, and legal responsibilities in those capacities. So when I think about this and I look at a recent decision, I think the mass does come up. And I honestly will say, you asked for something that I feel strongly about. It's not particularly a thing I feel strongly about other than continuing the access to education and safety of our children, obviously. But in terms of balancing those duties in all of my training and all of my career, I have a framework that I work with. And it starts with steps that build on each other. And the number one thing starting that off is listening. Throughout my entire career, I've had to either listen to a client or listen to adverse arguments or hear the courts or clarify instructions. So listening starts that entire decision-making process because it allows you to hear those that you're serving. And then building on that, the next step is learning. If you don't listen, you're probably not going to learn. And so learning from research and resources, as well as sometimes it's hard, your own mistakes. And so taking those as learning opportunities, and then fact gathering, because sometimes when you look at an issue, it's not really the issue you thought it was at the beginning. And so in terms of the masks, I think my number one thing is, are we listening to the community and constituents? Are we learning what we can from the appropriate resources, the medical professionals, the CDC, and the data that's available to us? And then the third step in that process is to analyze. If you don't learn in the step before that, it's going to be tough to analyze. So I think as you analyze, and I bring that skill to the table in terms of an attorney having to do that on a day-to-day basis, you can go through and then apply what you've heard and learned to your analysis, and then the next step is to decide. So in making that decision, at least, it's hard to make a sound decision if you haven't done those things before. And so in terms of making that decision, you talked about how I would go about making that decision and balancing the community, the law, and the other components. And I also have a framework for that, which really starts with efficiency. What is the best way to and efficiently enact a particular decision, and then results? How close are we going to get to what we want? We want kids in school, and we want kids safe. So what would every particular solution get us there? And then is it comprehensive? And then what is the risk? How risky is this decision legally, reputationally, politically? And we have to balance that and decide what that risk appetite is when making those decisions. And then communicate. Once you decide, and then you have to make a communication plan. So who, how, when, where, what, and how will that be done in terms of communicating with clarity, timeliness, and transparency. Early and often is what I usually tell claim reps and others that we're working with. And then finally, it ends with relationships, and it really shouldn't. Relationships are the core, but really, if you want to communicate, you have to have someone willing to listen to you. And so if you listen, learn, analyze, decide, communicate, and build those relationships, I think you can make really sound decisions.
What would you like to see changed in the district, and how would you envision your role in that change?
So in my first year having a freshman here at DeWitt High School, I got introduced to the marching band. He is bass one, the little baby bass out there. And so I began to learn about the band program and the music program and what's offered there. I think it's an incredible program. I mean, we were state champions this year, but I'd be very interested and passionate about ensuring that, there's proper resources for those other components of education as well, and that the education is diverse, as well as classroom offerings in some of those areas as well, to continue to enhance music and arts.
At times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as a trustee. How would you handle this particular situation?
Absolutely, that's a great question, and I think it's a core responsibility in any board service position. And as an attorney, it's something I have to do every day. I take my responsibility to uphold the law and regulations and standards very, very seriously. And in terms of my personal views, I've had multiple opportunities to grapple with that very situation. I served as a chair hearing officer for the Minnesota Sex Offender Program. And so in that capacity, I am serving as a judicial or quasi-judicial officer and hearing petitions for reduction in custody of those types of offenders. And so as one can imagine, there's not much favorable opinion in those areas, and they're very difficult and sensitive topics, and they can inspire some pretty strong views, me included. But I think as an attorney, we're trained to kind of go through that model I talked about the listening, the learning, the remaining open and unbiased, and then making a decision that supports your ethical and legal responsibilities.
Thank you.
Describe your responsible parent cornered you in a grocery store and ask for your support on a particular hot issue. In that particular area, I think that it's a reality, but it's also one of those things that can be handled very, very easily with taking the soft skills to welcome them so that they don't feel like they can't give input, but pointing them again in the right direction.
and to follow the proper protocol and process. And obviously, I would not lend my support to any particular issue. I do not speak on behalf of the board. That's something that I think I've said probably 1,000 times in training. No one individual speaks on behalf of the board. And in the circumstances where the board has made a determination, obviously that is to be upheld for sure. And in that situation, I think opening the gates and the doors to helping them navigate the system and be a part and be actively a participant and be heard would be the best value the board member can add in that situation.
What do you think are the most important skills for students to have when they graduate?
That is also an excellent question. I think in terms of skills, I'm looking for my children to leave and all children to leave with a sense of, I always say, be a good human, but that they are confident and competent to go out there and engage in their community and to be involved and to understand what that means to be a citizen of a community, that they are gaining discipline and structure and work ethic while they're doing that, but that they're also, and I think one of the greatest things that I think even my secondary education gave me was a passion to be a lifelong learner, that they're always curious, that to be curious. I hope that every student that leaves here remains curious throughout their entire life and sees that they develop that as their DeWitt.
And join this to me. And you kind of address this again, so we're going to ask you to take a little bit of a deeper dive. But what qualities, skills, and experience would you bring to this board?
Absolutely. I think that given my education, training, and background, I bring a excellent and strong combination of technical skills. So the analysis, the legal, the board expertise in terms of board operations and training. Having developed those trainings on behalf of the Office of the Attorney General in Minnesota, I've got a lot of experience with dealing with confidential data and open meetings and all of those respective issues, both from that perspective and experience, but also with private and public clients. But on the other side, I think I bring the soft skills. You cannot work with a board of psychologists. So I served the Minnesota Board of Psychology for 8.5 years. As their executive director, so think in the same similar role as to your superintendent, to your board, and served at the pleasure of the board. And you cannot leave that capacity without developing a strong set of emotional intelligence skills. They will not let you. They will not. And at first it was a quite interesting attorney to whole room of psychologists, but they turned out to be probably the world's best professional coaches. So I think I bring those skills, those compassionate listening skills, those curiosity to learn more and to be open to those ideas and those things, as well as navigating, building good relationships with the community as well.
Thank you.
So just if you have any final remarks, we welcome that.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time this evening to interview candidates and to give me this opportunity to be considered. I'm excited about the direction of the board, and I would be honored to serve on.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Gina Cooper. Good evening, welcome.
Hi, good evening.
So I'm going to start out with kind of an introductory question, and then we're going to work from my left to right.
Great.
So just kind of a general opening question of tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us why you're interested in serving on the board.
Yeah, great, thank you for having me. I first wanted to just take a moment and pause and say I sit here with you with a heavy heart. I understand why this position is open with the passing of Craig Taylor, an amazing servant here on the board, friend to all, and just hopeful that my skills might be able to carry on what he has started so strongly in this community. So I just wanted to recognize that firstly. Second to your question, the skills and what why I hope to be part of the board member. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. So I am a resident in DeWitt. My husband and I chose to become citizens in DeWitt because of the reputation of the school system and the community. Starting our business here, that's been here for 10 years. And this type of community doesn't happen by accident. It happens by people like yourselves, people in the community raising their hand to say, maybe I can help. Maybe I have some skill sets to help. And that's what I'm doing today. I'm raising my hand. Hopefully I can help in this, in the continuing the amazing reputation that you all have. What I'm bringing to the board, I think, is a mixture of experience in healthcare, business, and communications. I have my doctorate in audiology. I've worked extensively with the population of deaf and hard of hearing. I have personal experience with visual impairments and have worked on the Clinton County RESA Advisory Committee for Special Education. From a business perspective, we have a CPA firm in DeWitt, successful business that's been for more than a decade. But I worked as a regional director for a medical device industry for the deaf and hard of hearing. And with that, became very comfortable with things like operating budgets, working within time constraints, leading a multidisciplinary team that all has to come together for the advancements of the population. And then lastly, communications. So you don't work within a team, you don't succeed unless you can have those skills to actively listen, to ask questions, and to accept and listen to dissenting opinions on things. So I think I bring that as well.
Thanks.
Okay, Jim? Peter? Long question, lots of comments, so if you like me to repeat it, welcome to go, you can do that as well. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal value and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
Great question. I feel like the board has had a lot in front of you over the past year, from hiring superintendent to the bond to the back-to-school plan that you've had to administer. One thing I feel strongly about has to do with the bond proposal and passing that you worked so hard on. Right, $66 million for funds for facilities, for educational technology, for extracurricular activities. And while not a hugely controversial in the community, right, 71% I think voted to pass it, I think it has huge implications, and what I'm so excited about for the work that you guys did there was how that's going to help with inclusion. Inclusion, it's going to naturally help include all abilities and individuals with disabilities by upgrading the facilities, educational technology. It's a huge equalizer for individuals with disabilities and technology. And things like extracurricular activities, which can seem small, but in a post-pandemic world where the social development of our kids, we can get them together and have opportunities for friendships, et cetera. It's so important. So again, I think the passing of bond is something I feel strongly about that you worked towards because of its ability to continue to include our populations. I think to your other questions that you have, I think whenever there's a big a proposal on the table as such, it's really important to take into account everyone's viewpoints who might have a say in all of that. And I saw that. I think there's a lot of benefits for people to have, from facilities to extracurriculars, and you did a great job of explaining that need to the community. Again, law, you asked about coordination with laws. I think there's a lot to be said as those plans are laid out over the next 6 years, what that looks like. Are we complying with the different regulations for administering that bond? And then staffing, are we taking everyone's needs into consideration when we figure out how to fund and the specifics of what that looks like? But again, very excited about the work you've done and what that can do for inclusion and continuing that work.
What would you like to see changed in the district, and how would you envision your role in that change?
Great. What would I like to see changed in the district? I think there is a big challenge in front of all of us as we consider education, as we are starting to envision what that looks like in a post-pandemic world. I've recently had the privilege of serving on the school board subcommittee for curriculum, and had a lot of wonderful discussion around what this impact is looking like for our students, where these gaps might have been created that we weren't even thinking about. Things like sitting stamina in a classroom when you haven't been able and trained to sit as a 7-year-old for extended periods of time. So when I think what needs to change, I think we have to be open to looking away from the status quo, taking a step back and saying, what are the needs of our kids in a post-pandemic situation? Can we figure out what those are? Do we have the tools to assess those, understand what the gaps are, and then to help bridge those gaps for those students?
Gina, at times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law you're required to uphold as a trustee. How do you handle this situation?
Yeah, great question. I think first I'll say some of the most productive and healthy boards and committees I've sat on are consisted of people who have researched an opinion, have researched a topic, and are very comfortable sharing that with the group. That said, there is not always complete consensus, and that's also very important. But I think at the end of the day, it's a board's job to adopt policy. That policy, the board speaks through the adoption of the policy that it makes as a whole. And so coming together, having those opinions, sharing what that is, but then adopting that policy and sticking behind it as a whole, I think is very important for a successful board.
Describe your response if a parent cornered you in a grocery store and asked for your support on a particularly hot issue.
Great question. The Meijer grocery store that we all encounter, right? Well, first, I think it's important to listen. I think if it is worth that parent taking the effort to talk to you and share a concern, that's something that they feel passionate about. And I think it's up to us to take that into account and to listen to it. Listen for understanding. Listen for what additional questions need to be asked. But I also think it's important that as a member of a board, yes, you are one member of that board, and you don't speak for yourself. You speak within committee, you speak within the group. So I think while it's important to take it all in and to listen, I think it's equally important then to know when to raise that issue in discussion amongst the group.
Thanks.
What do you think are the most important skills for students to have when they graduate?
Yeah, what do we want our kids to know when they graduate? I think obviously the curriculum that we have developed and that we are implementing is key, but two other things come to mind. The first is transitions. So part of the work I have done on the committee for the special education is worked on a transition forum for the community. We ask our children, especially our children with disabilities, to go through a lot of transitions from school systems through ages. And one of the things I'm really passionate about is how are we preparing our students for that next transition away from graduation? Are they prepared? Do they know if they're looking at something like a skilled trade? There's so much opportunity out there in the skilled trade labor industry. Are we preparing them for post-secondary education? We have students in our schools that are going to be going down a certificate pathway, a diploma pathway. Are they prepared and have we given them the skills to make a successful transition to that global society that they're going to encounter? That's one. The second thing I think is important is critical thinking. Have we given our students the skills to think through something, to discuss that opinion, to have a conversation with people that don't agree with you? Those are skills that are so important as they go out in graduating, that I would hope my children who are in the district as well as the students we have are prepared for.
Thank you.
All right, Gina, touched on this as well in your responses earlier, but what quality, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
Yeah, what quality skills and experience would I bring to the board? Yeah, so I mentioned my healthcare background. I mentioned business skills, and I mentioned communication there. I feel like I can offer a viewpoint. I have a family that's rooted in the community. We have a business, successful business that is rooted in the community. I have children in all the different buildings from 8th grade down to 2nd grade and can offer that perspective. I can offer a perspective of what it's like to navigate a special education system and how the decisions that are made here can impact that. I can offer a perspective in what it looks like to have an inclusive environment. And I mean, overall, I think I can be a good team member. I have worked on educational boards and on the board for the DeWitt Travel Basketball Association. I think it's important to learn how to be a member of the team, and I think I can offer that to the community as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So last thing is just if you want to, any closing remarks or anything you'd like to leave us with today?
No, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate that. I appreciate the work you've done. Like I said, the reason we live in this community is because of the reputation that the school system and the community has. So thanks for your work on continuing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Opportunity for discussion about the board candidates. We have another place on the actual meeting as well, and then there'll be an action item. We'll vote. Thoughts? Anyone wants to be first to weigh in?
Well, I can weigh in. You know, it's always difficult when you have 3 really good candidates. That's always the tough part. And then, you know, out of the candidates, how they answer the questions and how they see it gives us the opportunity, much like the rest of the community, how their response or their involvement in other efforts, you know, will frame that. You know, one that I think we've all had experience with is if someone happens to see you in public, you know, how do you respond? And I think the answer to that question are all, you know, pretty much the same. Is we've all had those experiences, and I think that the key part they all said was to listen and learn, and in some cases, you know, some of that is the listen and you know, that parent that we run into, maybe they don't know some of the rest of it, but they're already kind of injected on that hot seat. So, you know, I think they all, for the most part, you know, directed it back to here, to the board, you know, the chain of command. I definitely appreciate that, you know, being the low guy on the totem pole. It's all right if they all come back to all you bigwigs on the board and have those discussions, but really to bring that back here, where I looked at the 3 of them, I would say based on the responses, there's probably one that I could say is not, you know, how equal to the other 2 based on the responses. And I think out of that, I would say I liked hearing Gina's involvement in the curriculum committee. I know one that has, you know, I spent my time as a early board member on the curriculum committee. Hats off to her as a parent and attending that, because as one that analyzes things on my own, that was a challenging committee for me to participate in, because there were a lot of educational words that I didn't understand, and dibbles and triples and other pieces that I heard that I had to ask for clarification. So from the board's perspective to the parent, thank you very much for sitting in those, because that's what I think we run into many times, is there's smaller group participation in some of our work group committees, and no doubt would be better to have, you know, more of that. I would have liked to have seen, you know, Angelina, you know, providing some of, you know, the same as well, although I will say I did see her involved in the band activities though, so.
I'm also on the sex ed advisory committee.
Yeah, so I only knew the band piece, didn't know the other part, thank God. But But I think those were two that I looked at, two that really separated from Mackenzie's. There's already some involvement in the community, in the school district in those pieces. So, you know, unfortunately, I'm not leaning enough to say, okay, here's one above the other. At least I'm sharing where I am with the two. I do like, you know, both candidates as they provided the listening and learning. I took notes on the framework piece. I can take that back to my, you know, my day job board. But those were very similar. I you know, will say as the first one out of the gate here, I think it is somewhat tough between the two candidates. So there you go. There's the kickoff. Sure, it didn't move the ball that far down the field, but it started.
Thanks for going first. For what it's worth, Brett, I'm aligned with you. I think I thought the same thing. Brilliant. I thought those two candidates both brought kind of different skill sets to the board, which is something I try to keep in the back of my mind as a board. What do we need here? Additional expertise to need. So, but I'm with you. I'm still kind of struggling between those two. I'll go back to my material and try to figure out a decision in the next 10 minutes or so.
I mean, if we could do a straw poll and vote someone off the board now, there's two good candidates we have. But I'm sure.
Be careful when you ask me. You may have
You might have volunteers.
We totally agree with that.
You may not go have dinner with my family tonight? Great. Okay.
I'll just third that. I agree with everything you both said. Keep it short and sweet.
Anything else, Weaver?
No, nothing new to add.
You guys have said a lot to this point, so I think we got two strong candidates to choose from out of it.
All right. Well, we'll discuss a little further in the actual real board meeting. Public communication. Do you have anybody Want me to move that?
Can I just sit there? Can I just sit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. So obviously I listened to the interviews and you guys seem kind of on the fence about a couple of candidates. I would like to say I have a clear favorite. I think Gina was the most impressive interview. She seemed warm and open and real. Her answers didn't seem rehearsed. Her experience was relevant, legitimate. Her insights to post-pandemic issues that children might face, I thought that that was a really good thing for her to bring up. I thought that that was something that I was interested in hearing. Her answer to the grocery store question seemed by far the best to me. She seemed like she would be willing to listen before. The other answers seemed to me more like they would be afraid to engage at all and listen. And I think that's one of the biggest jobs of the board is to be listening and representing the community. Her answer to the question about graduation skills of critical thinking seemed by far the best answer to me as well. I think her temperament was great. And if I was voting in an election, I would, between those three candidates, I would be voting for Gino 100% over the other two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just second that. I like the end of pandemic talk that she had.
All right, if there's no other public comment, motion to adjourn.